welcome to Analyst IAS. I am Ekta Sharma and today we are going to take up another topic for discussion, and that is India's Arctic policy. Now this topic has been in news lately after quite a long time. After a lot of discussion and debate, finally India has come up with its Arctic policy. Now, Arctic region of this world is very essential from various point of views, from various dimensions. Arctic region is very crucial, not just for India, but for the whole globe. You can see that even during the course of our lecture, we are going to see how Arctic is essential economically, in terms of environment, in terms of energy security, as well as strategically. Now this region, this Arctic region is very important from various point of views, and also one more important dimension that adds on to the importance of this region is transportation and communication. So these are the various arenas that make this region very important for the whole globe. But since we are talking about India's Arctic policy, we will try to limit our lecture towards just the Arctic Council, importance of Arctic and India and Arctic, the region, Arctic region. And also we are going to discuss about the India's Arctic policy. Now, without any further ado, let us start our discussion on India's Arctic policy. Before we move on, it is very important for us to understand the significance of this region, or at least, few pointers about this region. Now, Arctic region is basically the North Pole. The North Pole. North Pole and the surrounding region around the North Pole is called the Arctic region, and this region falls above the Arctic Circle. So, the whole region around Arctic Circle or above the Arctic Circle is known as the Arctic region. Towards the North Pole, now towards the South Pole we have Antarctic, and towards the North Pole we have the Arctic. Now, as you can see that this whole region encapsulates many countries. So this region does not just include just one country, but it has many countries including Russia. It has Finland, Sweden, Norway, Ireland, Greenland, Canada, so on and so forth. So these are the major countries that fall within this Arctic Circle and in the Arctic region. So it basically covers almost as much as 1/6 of the Earth's landmass. It covers the 1/6 of the world's landmass. So you can see, you can understand that even if it is frozen, the whole region is highly frozen under ice and snow, yet this region, given the enormity of this region, it is very crucial. Geospatially, Arctic is located above the Arctic Circle, which encompasses Arctic Ocean basin, the northern parts of Scandinavia, Russia, Canada, Denmark and Alaska. Canada, Russia, Denmark, Norway and Alaska have direct access to as well as jurisdiction over the Arctic Ocean. So which are the countries that have direct access and jurisdiction over this region? These countries are Canada, Russia, Denmark, Norway and Alaska. So this can be an important statement based question which can be asked related to Arctic region. Moving on, it is home to about 4 million, almost a tenth of them being indigenous tribes. So because this region is highly frozen, it is under snow and ice, they cannot, you cannot expect a lot of development there, right? Because there are obvious limitations to economic and various other forms of development. That is why out of this 4 million, a tenth of these people, they belong to indigenous tribes. This gives this region another important aspect that needs to be taken care of while dealing with this region, right? You cannot outrightly go to the region or to the countries of the region and can start discussing about development, so on and so forth. You have to keep in mind the regional, the tribal interests also. Moving on. Now, what is the context? Why are we talking about this region? Why are we talking about this whole region, the Arctic region? Because, see, the Ministry of Earth Sciences has recently come up with an India's Arctic policy. India and the Arctic building a partnership for sustainable development. Now, every word of the policies that a country comes up with, every report, every word of the report, the title of the report is very essential. You need to understand each and every word, need to look into each and every word, because all of them, they have some hidden meanings, or they in a way try to encapsulate the whole of the report or policy. Now look at this. Here, after India and Antarctic, after talking about the two regions, what they say, building a partnership for sustainable development. Now, here this word sustainable development is very crucial, is very essential for you to keep in mind, because this region is, you can say that this is a very important, essential part of the overall global environment, because the heating of this region has an impact on the overall temperature of the globe, of Earth, right? So, to protect this region from global warming has become one of the major arenas where almost every country around the world and the scientific community of the world is trying to develop or come up with more and more research and solutions to reduce the global warming or the impact of global warming on this region. Now, why is that so? Because a lot of the ice and snow present in this region is gradually reducing. The reduction in the ice and snow in this region has, first of all, it is impacted, the region has been impacted because of the global warming. Because of global warming, the ice sheets are melting. The ice sheets and icebergs and all these ice and snow areas, they are melting, and thus there has been an increase, a consecutive increase in the sea water or the water level around the globe. This has endangered numerous island countries, numerous islands, or even the coastal regions of various countries, including India. So you can see how environmentally this region is a very important pinnacle for the healthy development of the whole world, right? So that is why this region has attracted a lot of attention in recent years. Not just this, in terms of sources also, or in terms of resources also, you can say that as much as or approximately 22% of oil and gas is still, this is what I'm saying about the undiscovered sources. So scientist community expects this much of undiscovered oil and gas resources in this region. Not just this, recently almost approximately 25% of rare earth minerals are also expected to be here. They are expected to be in this region, and this gives a very important limelight to the Arctic region. Now, without deviating from our main topic, that is sustainable development, that is outrightly given in the policy, it is very essential to keep an eye on the changes, on the environmental changes and the developmental patterns that we are coming up with around the globe and within this region, because any kind of development needs to be sustainable to ensure a healthy development in this region and healthy environment around the globe. Moving on. Now we are going to talk about the policy that India has come up with. See, the aim of this policy is enhancing countries' cooperation with the resource-rich, rapidly transforming region, that is Arctic region. It seeks to strengthen national capabilities, competencies in science and exploration, climate and environment protection, maritime and economic cooperation with the Arctic region. So this is a very bulky statement. You can encapsulate all these things in 6 major pillars of the policy. So there are 6 pillars of this India's Arctic policy. Let's see what these are. The first pillar is science and research. So in this policy, a major area of focus is science and research. Now see, science and research, especially in terms of environment, is very essential, because we need to come up with more research that can help us protect the environment, that can help us to have more sustainable economic development. So that is why the first focus of our policy is science and research. The second pillar is climate and environmental protection. Now in regards to India, overall, people say, or the scientific community believes, that along with 2 poles, that is north and south, where in north we have Arctic, in south we have Antarctic. There is another third pole, and that is, the third pole is referred to Himalayas. Himalayas are considered to be the third pole. You know, there is a consensus in the scientific community because of the kind of glaciers that are present in Himalayas, the amount of snow and ice present in Himalayas. Himalayas are thus called as the third pole. So in this regard, India can not just contribute to the sustainable development and various scientific researches in protecting the environment and ice sheets in Antarctic, but it can also have a lot to learn from Arctic region in regards to protecting Himalayas, how to protect Himalayas, how to protect the glaciers of Himalayas, because we know that even the Himalayan glaciers are falling prey to the changing environment, to increasing global temperature and thus melting away. So the second part, or the second pillar, is climate change and environmental protection. Another important point you need to keep in mind is that, see, when we talk about environment, you know that Earth is like a big glass house, right? In this, we have everything is connected with everything else, right? So as a very famous adage or a very famous saying goes, that when a butterfly flutters its wings in one part of the globe, the impact can be felt in another, right? So this is the kind of connectivity, especially in terms of environment, of the whole globe. Now, to be very focused or to be very specific in this regard, I need to tell you that melting ice in Arctic is leading to numerous changes around it and around the globe. Few of these changes are changes in salinity of the ocean water, the temperature of water, ocean water, so on and so forth. So these 2 major factors, you might have read in the geography, in your geography, that these 2 things are very crucial to the overall tide patterns, the overall, the overall temperature and various weather patterns of the globe. right? So the salinity and temperature of the water of the oceans is very essential, because it in a long run impacts the tide, it in long run impacts the waves of the ocean, and they in turn impact the overall weather of the local region of the they impact the direction of the local airs, so on and so forth. So overall everything is so much connected that the melting of Arctic has an impact on what? On Indian monsoon. So the melting ice in Arctic is having impact on Indian monsoon as well, right? So that is why it makes it very important for India to keep in mind the environmental impacts of melting glaciers and ice in Arctic, and to be included in their long-term policy approach. The third one is economic and human development. See, as we have already discussed, that economically this overall in terms of economic resources, this area is highly rich. So there are numerous minerals present there, rare earth minerals present there, oil and gas explorations are going on there, because we expect that there are unexplored resources, reserves of oil and gas, so on and so forth. So in terms of economic and human development as well, there is a lot of scope in this region. The fourth one is transportation and connectivity. Now, this whole region, if the transportation, because of the melting ice, the thickness of ice is reducing, the thickness of ice sheets is reducing, and since the ice is reducing, the waterways the water channels are opening up. Because of this opening up of water channels around the Arctic Circle, new water routes, new trade routes, new sea routes are they are coming to limelight. And this new trade route or this new sea route can be very impactful, because it can cut off the travel time, the travel expenses that one has to pay to, for example, for reaching from Europe to Japan, one has to take a long sail. This the app opening up of these new routes can cut down the time as well as expenditure on these long route sails. So this can open up small or shorter travel routes for countries to be connected for trade. So in terms of transportation and connectivities, it's also very important. Then fifth is governance, international cooperation. See, currently, if you talk about the Ukrainian crisis, the region is very hot right now, and this region falls very close to the Arctic region. The Ukraine, Europe, Russia, all these countries, they are pretty close to Arctic region, and this has created a lot of tension in the region itself. Not just that, a lot many countries, another aspect to this is that a lot many countries are getting attracted to this region because of the resources, because of the capabilities this region has, the potential this region has, as well as the economic factor, environmental factor. Because of all these things, multiple countries are getting attracted towards this region. So internationally, any country that has impact or that has influence in this region is going to, in the long run, be it is going to have a higher influential power, strategic power internationally. So in terms of international governance and cooperation also, this region is very important. And finally, national capacity building. So helping the local tribes, as we have discussed that a lot many people belong to local indigenous tribes. So helping these people, helping this region develop their overall capacity and national capacity building, helping them in this is very essential for India as well, and is going to pay back India in the long term. So these are the various the 6 pillars of India's Arctic policy. Moving on, multiple stakeholder approach. The policy seeks to strengthen institutional and human resource capacity with the involvement of different stakeholders like academia, research community, business and industry. So from those 6 policy pillars, you can see how multiple areas of life are connected with Arctic, like the environmental factor is there, the economic factor is there, the transportation, energy security, so on and so forth. In fact, there are international cooperation is also essential in that region. So India understands that various people from different backgrounds, from different areas, from expertise in different areas are essential to be brought together, and after bringing them together they need to there needs to be a basically a highly multiple stakeholder approach, like multiple stakeholders, various people from different areas, they need to come together and need to think about developing sustainable development models or sustainable models for the region. The next one is cooperation between countries. Obviously, after the stakeholders, what are the various countries that need to come together? See, this region is not something that just one country has a hold on, right? There are multiple countries that are there. They have their exclusive economic zones in this region, in the Arctic region. So, and also various countries that have their stakes, that have their explorations started there, that have multiple areas which they have indulged themselves into in the Arctic region. So all these countries, they need to come together to build a sustainable approach. The policy seeks to study the linkages between polar regions and Himalayas. See, we discussed that how Himalayas being the third pole are important, and how India can learn a lot from the Arctic region to be applied in the Himalayan region. They deepen the cooperation between India and countries of the Arctic region under various Arctic forums. As per the policy, India aspires to have a permanent presence. So up till now, India, after 2008, after Himadri station was, India developed its Himadri station there. After that, India more or less has a permanent presence, but the presence need to be made more permanent, right? Overall, currently India's presence is not as permanent in there, right? India is still focusing, or India, it wishes to have a more permanent presence in this region, more research stations, and establish satellite ground stations in the Arctic region. Moving on, significance of Arctic. So let's discuss the significance, why there has been so much so much talks and discussions and debates regarding this region. Why this region is so much of importance? Let's discuss the significance of this region and try to understand how this region has impacted the whole of the world. Untapped resources. The region is rich in resources with as much as 13% of world's undiscovered oil and 30% of undiscovered natural gas reserves. So you can see that there is a huge lot of undiscovered reserves, oil and gas reserves in there, which are untapped, right? You can understand that currently all the reserves of oil and gas, they are gradually depleting. Now, all the countries are looking for newer resources, they are looking for newer reserves for these oil and gas, and that is why in that direction this region has gained a lot of importance, because scientists and the scientific community, they feel that there are numerous untapped resources, untapped reserves of oil and gas in this region. It also is the largest unexplored prospective area of marine living resources and hydrocarbons remaining on Earth. Apart from that, there is a lot of undiscovered biodiversity. A naive mind can feel that since the region is highly frozen and the area or the overall climate or the conditions are not very easy to live in, the biodiversity will not be that much. But believe me, scientific community believes that there's a lot many fauna and flora, both animals as well as tiny species of bacteria and viruses, and a lot many things, they exist there and they are yet to be explored. So there's a lot of biodiversity scope in this region. Shipping routes Many shipping routes. Now, this is the second point of significance, as we have already discussed that many shipping routes, they run through the region. Shorter shipping routes connecting the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans pass through the region. So what is happening right now? See, these shipping routes were blocked because of thick ice sheets. Right. Now this thick ice sheet is melting. Gradually, large chunks of ice, they are breaking into smaller ones and creating space and creating route for the mobility of various sea or water vehicles, right? Because of that, new routes are coming up. New sea routes are coming up, and these new sea routes are way shorter than other routes which currently are there, the trade routes. And because of these shorter routes, see, the shorter the route, the less will be the expenditure on the oil or anything that is required in the transportation, as well as the time. As they say, time is money, my friend. So time is actually money, because the world is running on such a quick pace that time, every second counts. Even for you as students, don't you think that time is money? Every time, every second is important for you. Same goes with transportation. The shorter the distance, the less the expenditure, the less the time, and the higher the economic gains. So that is why these smaller or shorter sea routes are very essentials. That these shorter sea routes that are opening up in the region are very essential for the international trade. Now let's talk about the ecological impact on Arctic. Up till now, we have discussed more or less all these points, but just to reiterate these points, just to understand them better, let's look at the various points. The first one is loss of ice and the warming waters will affect sea levels, salinity levels, precipitation pattern. As we have discussed this earlier, the melting ice is just adding on to the water. The melting ice is basically fresh water. So the salinity, what is being impacted? See, if the ice is melting, what is it impacting? The overall temperature of oceans, right? The second thing that it is impacting is the salinity. Since the fresh water is melting or adding on to the oceans, the salinity levels are reducing of various areas. So salinity of the ocean and temperature of the ocean, there are differences being created because of this melting ice, and because of this, there is an impact on the precipitation. The overall precipitation levels, the overall precipitation patterns of the world. And one of the major example is monsoon of India. Right? The major example is monsoon of India. You might have recently seen that there are years that sometimes there are years where we barely get any monsoon, but there are years when we get way too much of rains, right? So there is a lot of changes happening. There is a lot of unpredictability related to the monsoon. In fact, the number of cyclones hitting the shores of India and various other countries has also increased. So all these factors have recently either increased or decreased. Basically, they have changed, and the changes are because of the global warming that is impacting the ice sheets in the Antarctic and Arctic. The second one is, according to the current scientific census, the Arctic may experience nearly ice-free summers as early as 2030s. So you can imagine this huge region that once was covered with lots and lots of ice is expected to experience an ice-free summer in 2030s, right? Or as early as 2030s. So the time is not very far when the water levels are going to rise and the coastal regions are going to go deep under the ocean, right? So It is a very alarming situation for all of us, and the steps for betterment of environment, of the global temperature need to be taken. Actually, it's already very late, but it's, it's never too late for the right steps. So it is high time that we start acting more responsibly. The third one is the tundra is returning to swamp, permafrost is thawing, sudden storms are ravaging coastlines, and wildfires are devastating. So it basically encapsulates everything, all the environmental changes, everything that is happening around the world more frequently, more, the devastation that it is creating, the various hazards that have come up in limelight lately. So this is overall the third point. Moving on, let's talk about the Arctic Council. You might get a direct question, a statement-based question from Arctic Council. It is very factual, just need to remember the facts and that's it. Now, this Arctic Council, it was formed after Ottawa Declaration in 1996. Arctic has 8 states: Canada, Denmark, Finland, Norway, Iceland, Russia, Sweden, and United States. These are the circumpolar members of Arctic Council. Circumpolar members means those regions, those countries that fall on the Arctic circle. So these are called the circumpolar members of Arctic Council. The council is envisaged as a forum to promote cooperation, coordination, interaction among the Arctic states. Arctic indigenous people and Arctic inhabitants on common Arctic issues like environmental protection, sustainable development. So basically, Arctic Council provides a forum, a platform for all these people who are directly impacted by the changes in Arctic region, who are a part of Arctic region more or less. So it is all these people, they come together to discuss sustainable development, because development is inevitable. The current mindset of people, of human beings, is such that they need to develop, they want to develop, right? But the development is coming at a cost. So there is a need to sit down and rethink the models of development and include more sustainability of development, sustainable models of development to protect environment. Then observer status is given to various countries. There are 5 countries. There are 5 countries from Asia, including India, China, Japan, South Korea, and Singapore, who got observer status in 2013. So India got its observer status in 2013, and it maintained that observer status for 5 years, and it was renewed again in 2018. So India's observer status was renewed again in 2018. In total, 13 nations are observers in the Arctic Council. So these are just 5 members of Asia who are observers in Arctic Council. Apart from these, there are other countries also who maintain an observer status. Now, how do we understand India's relations with Arctic? How do we understand India's current ideas of Arctic? How do we understand Arctic situation for India? The very first point, Svalbard Treaty in Paris. After this treaty in 1920, India got some economic and commercial rights in the Arctic region. Those included basically fishing fishing and other things. So very basic economic and commercial rights were granted to India in 1920, Svalbard Treaty in Paris. Now, the second point talks about the transportation and connectivity. India ranks 3rd in the list of seafarer supplying nations, catering to almost 10% of global demand. Now, India is among the topmost countries that is included in trade, in world trade, and India's maritime human resources could contribute towards meeting the growing requirements of Arctic. Now, maritime human resources means that India has a lot of experience in maritime activities. Gradually, as the water is increasing around the Arctic region, India can be of much help for this region, especially with its background in maritime human resources. Now, the third point is energy security. India has recently, see, you might have read about or heard about this point of diversification of energy resources. So, India is in various policies has been thinking about diversifying its energy resources. Diversifying energy resources basically means including more and more countries or energy rich countries in its list from where India can import oil and gas resources and various other resources. So basically this is essential. Please do read about this diversification of its sources of energy since 2018, because see, lately we all have realized that sticking to just one single source of energy, like sticking to one single country for a particular resource like oil or petroleum or gas, it in the long run it impacts the national interest. Because lately, for example, if we talk about, if we are dependent, highly dependent on Russia for say our defense equipments, if because of certain events Russia comes under the international scanner and becomes a so-called defaulter, then in that case India, and recently also you can see that Russia has been put under numerous sanctions by various countries, including big countries like USA and Japan. So after these sanctions are put on a country, then in this situation, India, being highly dependent for its defense equipments, like hypothetically highly dependent on Russia for its defense equipments, will be in loss, because you cannot directly trade with Russia. You don't want to make USA or Japan, these are two big powers of current world. You don't want to upset these two powers. So you might not be able to directly trade with Russia or trade with Russia so much so as you were doing earlier. Right, so in that case, what will be impacted? India's imports of defense equipment. So India needs to diversify the importers. It needs to diversify the countries from where it is getting various resources. So this is what the diversification of resources is. Since 2018, it has been in news, and India has been focusing on tapping the oil and gas reserves in Russian Arctic. India has also collaborated with Denmark, Norway, and Sweden on issues related to environmental protection and polar science cooperation. So this is basically India needs to diversify its resources, and that is why it is focusing so much on the Arctic region. Now, what are the various challenges? What are the various challenges that this region faces? Currently, the major challenge is human development. The indigenous inhabitants of the Arctic are being inexorably impacted by the climate change, as well as economic development and improved connectivity. Now, this is basically something like, tribal people who are being impacted by the development happening around them. So, their tribal ways of living are being impacted, and this in the long run is not good for their identity, their existence, so on and so forth. So it is similar to socio-ecological economic predicament of Himalayan peoples. Like we are facing the same situation with people who are living in Himalayas, the Himalayan tribe, the Himalayan people, right? They're facing the same dichotomy between development and their own ways. There is a lot of tussle that is going on between the indigenous people, in the heads of indigenous people within the country, that whether should they go along with the country towards the development, or let go of the economic and ecological balance that they have maintained since ages up till now, or should they stick to their own ways of living. So this is a kind of dichotomy these people in Arctic are also facing. And because of this dichotomy, the human development is impacted, because if a tribe, it decides to not opt, or it decides not to go for development and just wants to stick to its own ways of lifestyle, they have right now, then in that case the human development will not be there, and because of this lack of human development in the region, they people may not be able to be included with the mainstream. So this is the main challenge. Then second is China's acceleration in Arctic affairs. Now China has declared itself as a near Arctic state. So if you see in the globe, you will see that China, it also lies a little close to the Arctic region, right? So that is why it has declared itself as a near Arctic state in 2018, making Arctic region a part of its project to build a polar Silk Road. So Silk Road was not enough. Now they have come up with polar Silk Road. They are now trying to enter into the Arctic region as well, and you have already seen wherever China enters, the area becomes highly disputed. So this is another challenge that this region is facing right now. Now, a major challenge apart from these two is Ukraine crisis. Ukraine it lies quite close to the Arctic region. The country Russia, it also lies pretty close to Arctic region. In fact, a lot of part of Russia, it lies within the Arctic Circle in the Arctic region. So this has made the whole region, it has brought the whole region under the scanner for the international community. The 8 members Arctic Council has 5 NATO members: Canada, Denmark, Iceland, Norway, and US. And apart from this, Russia is also there. So again, it becomes a tussle zone. Then strategic location of Ukraine. Ukraine is a country of strategic importance for Europe in terms of its connectivity with other neighboring regions, including the Arctic. Why are people fighting over Ukraine? Because you see that Ukraine is, it is a major point from where one can connect with the sea routes, right? This brings Ukraine into the strategic portal and makes it a very important, a strategically significant country for the other countries around. The next point is India's quiet diplomacy. Now, India has been consistently criticized for its quiet diplomacy, where on one hand, big countries like US and Japan and various other countries, they have put sanctions on Russia for the current Ukrainian crisis. India has stayed quiet. In fact, it has not voted. It has maintained its silence even in United Nations over the Russian invasion, and this has somehow, it has in a way upset various other countries that have come together against Russian invasion. Strategic dilemma for India. A few of major oil investors have announced withdrawal from the projects with Russia. Now currently, as we have discussed, that India has entered into the Russian Arctic zone, and there India is exploring new oil and gas resources. Now here, many investors have withdrawn from the project, and this leaves India in a very a gray area. It leaves India in a very, very difficult situation. In the Arctic after Western sanction, India is in strategic dilemma on how to deal with several pending projects. So this has increased since the investors are out of the project. Now India is now currently dealing with how to handle these withdrawals by the investors, and there are numerous pending projects currently. You might have read about India's pending projects. There are numerous projects that India initiated and could not conclude or could not complete. There are numerous delays even in the projects that are going on within India. So pending projects, they are very, they have adverse economic impact on the economy of countries. Now in this case, because of these pending projects, India has been put in a very dilemmic situation, in a dilemma where India doesn't know where to go. Myth of Arctic exceptionalism. Russian invasion could spill into the polar region. Definitely it is going to spill in, because the polar region lies very close to Russia. It lies very close to Ukraine. So this is going to have a spillover impact on the Arctic region too. Geopolitics of the region. Now, this is an important point. There are challenges with emerging Arctic dispensation, with NATO reasserting itself in the region, Russia consolidating its position, and China seeking to realize its long-term dream of polar Silk Road in collaboration with Russia. So, you know that Russia and China are collaborating on various fronts. Now, what is happening is there is a kind of tug of war going on in this region between various countries. There are countries that support NATO, that are members of NATO. Then there is Russia supported by China. Everyone has their own agenda. But between this agenda, what is going on? This whole region, the Arctic region, which requires a lot of attention, which requires a lot of care at this point of time when the environment has totally gone haywire, this region is being neglected and the whole attention is being given to the politics, the strategic situations, the strategies, politics, international reordering, so on and so forth. So the attention has been diverted from environmental concerns, climatic concerns towards this international issue. Then Arctic governance. Now we have seen that in Arctic governance, even in the Arctic Council, there are numerous countries. There are various countries that together come together and discuss on the developmental, the economic development, the sustainable development, and the development of the indigenous tribes of this region. So they try to talk about the improvement of the region, the development of the region. But because of this tug of war, because of the tussles that are going on between these countries, this whole region has become so hot that the Arctic governance has been impacted. So this was all about Arctic, India's Arctic policy, Arctic region, and various issues related to the Arctic region. I hope the class was helpful to you. I hope the concepts are now more clear to you. I hope now you understand that how India has gradually developed its role in Arctic region, how Arctic region is essential for India, and how the two are collaborated, and how India's Arctic policy is important, not just for India, but for the Arctic region too. Thank you so much. Keep studying. Take care.